I found my wife cheating with her boss on our honeymoon, and now she's claiming I owe her $200, $0 in marital expenses, even though I discovered she secretly transferred our house worth $750, $0 to her sister during the chaos. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating on his honeymoon, but here I am, living that nightmare. It all started with what seemed like a perfect trip, just me and Emily, our first real getaway after tying the knot. We had saved up for months, picked a fancy resort, and I was honestly excited to start our married life in the best way possible. But within a couple of days, little things started to feel off. She was more distant than usual, checking her phone constantly, and brushing off my questions with that fake smile she always wears when she's hiding something. The first real sign was when I noticed her phone buzzing nonstop. Even during dinner, she'd quickly swipe away notifications, and her responses to my questions about her day became more curt. I brushed it off as her being stressed about work, but then I caught her sneaking out of the room late one night. I followed her down the hallway, and she slipped into a door I'd never seen her go into before. I peeked through the keyhole. There she was with her boss, Mark, in a heated, passionate embrace. My stomach dropped. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't want to believe it at first. I mean, I'd known Emily was ambitious, but this, I thought she loved me. I'd seen her flirt, sure, but I told myself it was harmless. Until that moment. Watching her with Mark, I realized this wasn't just a fling, it was something deeper. They were planning to meet again, probably right under my nose. I was stunned, angry, and hurt all at once. How could she do this to me on our honeymoon? The trip we'd been dreaming about, and now I was stuck with this betrayal burning in my mind. I didn't confront her immediately. I needed a plan. I spent the next few hours lurking outside her door, trying to process what I'd just seen. My mind raced. What was her excuse? Did she think I wouldn't find out? And then I remembered the little things she'd been doing lately, missing her phone, secretive texts, the way she'd always be quick to shut down when I asked about her day. It all clicked into place. She'd been lying, hiding something, and now I knew what it was. The next morning, I waited until she was in the shower. I couldn't just leave it at that. I grabbed her phone, scrolled through her messages, and found plenty of proof. Photos of her and Mark, flirtatious texts, plans for secret meetups. I was furious, but I knew I had to confront her face to face. When she came out, I was already sitting there, her phone in my hand. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Emily, I saw what you've been doing. I saw the messages, the photos. How long has this been going on?" Her face twisted into that fake, innocent look she always wore when she knew she was in trouble. She giggled nervously and said, "Oh, come on, it's not what you think, it's just work stuff. Mark and I are just friends, you're overreacting." Her tone was dismissive, like she was insulted that I even doubted her, but I wasn't buying it, not anymore. That moment hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do something destructive, but I held my composure, knowing this was just the beginning. I realized that my entire life with Emily had been a lie, her words, her promises, her fake affection. I couldn't just pretend I hadn't seen this. I knew I had to do something, and fast. I sat there, staring at her, trying to process what this meant for us. I felt the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me, and I wondered how I'd ever trust her again, or if I even wanted to. The honeymoon was supposed to be the start of our forever, but now it felt like the end of everything I thought I knew about her, about us. I didn't say a word at first. I just looked at her, waiting for her to explain herself, knowing full well that whatever she said next wouldn't change what I'd uncovered. And that's when I realized this was just the beginning of a long, complicated mess I'd have to untangle. Little did I know, this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about money, lies, and a whole web of deception that would turn my entire world upside down. I had no idea what was coming next, but I knew I couldn't stay silent. After that confrontation, everything changed in an instant. Emily's face kept twisting into that fake, innocent expression, but I saw right through it. She started to deny, to make excuses, to throw out all the typical lines. It's just sex. It's not what you think, it's a mistake. She even had the audacity to say, "You're overreacting. Mark and I are just colleagues. You're jealous, that's all." I could see her trying to spin it, but I wasn't buying any of it. I'd seen enough to know this was more than just some fling. It was a full-blown affair. The thing that hit me hardest was how she lied so easily, like it was nothing. She kept insisting she was just tired, or under stress, or that I was being paranoid. But I knew better. I'd seen the messages, the photos, their plans. It was all right there. And what made me even angrier was how dismissive she was of my feelings. Like I was some jealous idiot who couldn't handle her success or her independence. That was the moment I realized just how little she cared about us or what I thought. I sat there staring at her, my mind racing. I couldn't process how I'd been so blind. For months, I'd been working my ass off, long hours at my job, trying to give her the life she wanted. And all the while, she was sneaking around with her boss, Mark, behind my back. I felt betrayed on every level, not just as a husband, but as a man who thought he'd built something real. I'd been so proud of the life we'd started, and now it felt like I'd been living in a lie. I remember feeling this surge of rage and helplessness. I wanted to lash out, to scream at her, to break something. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I couldn't let her manipulate me with her lies anymore. I had to be smart about this. I decided to get some proof, something concrete, before I made any rash decisions. I pulled out my phone and started recording her denying, her lying, her trying to gaslight me. I wanted everything documented, just in case I needed it later. While she kept up her act, I started to piece together what this all meant. I remembered the recent changes in her behavior, how she'd suddenly become more secretive about her phone, how she'd disappear for hours and come back with that guilty look. I knew she'd been hiding something big, and now I had proof. I also found a few bank statements on her phone showing transfers to her sister's account, large sums of money that I'd never authorized. That was strange, and I decided to dig deeper. That night, I sat in our hotel room, feeling like I was in some bad movie. I kept replaying the moment I caught her with Mark, the betrayal, the lies. It was like my entire world was crumbling around me. I started to question everything: our marriage, her loyalty, even my own judgment. I wondered how I could have missed all the signs, the secretive phone calls, the late nights, the strange expenses she'd been racking up. Turns out she'd been preparing for this for a while. She'd transferred our house worth over $750, $0 into her sister's name during the chaos, trying to shield her assets from me. I found out about it from a bank statement I uncovered the next morning. That discovery hit me like a punch to the stomach. I'd been working hard to build a life, and she was secretly pulling the rug out from under me. Transferring our house, our one big investment, without telling me was the ultimate betrayal. That's when I realized this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about her systematically destroying what we had and trying to hide her tracks. I felt a mix of rage and helplessness. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly and then turn around and claim I owed her $200, $0 in marital expenses? That was her way of trying to justify her betrayal, by throwing fake accusations and demanding compensation for her losses. I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her get away with this. I started planning my next move: how to confront her again, how to get more proof, and how to protect myself legally. I also realized I needed to call an attorney because she was clearly trying to pull some kind of scam, and I didn't want to get caught up in her web of lies. I felt betrayed, angry, and confused all at once, but I also knew I had to stay calm and methodical. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, replaying everything that had happened. My trust in her was shattered. I wondered how I'd ever look at her the same way again. I felt like a fool for not seeing the signs earlier, for not defending myself sooner. But I also knew I had to take control of this mess. The next day, I was going to meet with a lawyer and start building my case. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't going to end with her getting away with everything she'd done. I'd been betrayed in the worst way, and now I was determined to fight back. The truth was finally out, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. This was just the beginning of a battle I didn't want to fight, but I knew I had no choice. My mind was racing with all the ways she'd lied, cheated, and stolen from me, and I was ready to make her pay. The more I dug into her financials, the darker things got. Turns out, Emily had been planning this for a while. The transfer of the house to her sister, Lisa, was just the tip of the iceberg. I found bank statements showing she'd been siphoning off money from our joint account over the past 6 months. Large sums, sometimes under the guise of marital expenses, but in reality just money she was hiding away. She'd always been good at lying, but these documents told the real story. She'd been planning her escape, and I was just now catching up. I remember feeling sick to my stomach. I'd worked so hard to build a good life, to give her everything she wanted. And she was secretly pulling the rug out from under me. The house, our savings, her own lies, all of it was a web of deception. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. She'd always been the bitchy type, quick with a snide remark, dismissive when I asked about her whereabouts, but I never thought she'd go this far. That she'd betray me on our honeymoon of all times just floored me. I made a decision that day, no more hiding. I called my lawyer, a guy named Tom who specializes in divorce and asset protection. I explained everything from the affair to her secret transfers and the money she'd been hiding. He told me to gather all the evidence, and that's exactly what I did. I printed out every bank statement, saved the texts, took screenshots of her secret chats with Mark. I wanted everything documented. If she thought she could lie her way out of this, she was dead wrong. That night, I sat in the hotel room feeling numb, trying to process the magnitude of what I'd uncovered. She was a master manipulator, and I was just now realizing how deep her lies went. I also found out that she'd been secretly transferring money to her sister's account, more than $200, $0, during the chaos of discovering her affair. That's when I realized she was trying to cover her tracks, hide her assets, and make it impossible for me to claim anything if I decided to divorce her. But the most shocking thing was the transfer of our house. I found the legal documents, signed by her, notarized and filed during the night she was supposedly away on business. She transferred the title to Lisa, claiming it was for family reasons, but I knew better. She was trying to shield her assets from me, probably to avoid losing everything in a divorce. I felt like I'd been punched again. How could she do this? How could she lie, cheat, and steal from me like that? I was furious, not just at her but at myself for not seeing it sooner. I had trusted her, loved her, and she'd been secretly planning her escape all along. I realized I had to act fast if I wanted to protect what was mine. I contacted Lisa, her sister, who was surprisingly cooperative. She admitted Emily had asked her to hold the house for safekeeping, but I knew better. It was a way for Emily to keep her assets hidden, to make sure I couldn't claim them if I found out. Meanwhile, Emily kept playing the victim. She told everyone that I was crazy, that I was accusing her without proof, that I was just jealous of her success. She claimed I was trying to ruin her career, and that I was bitter because she was making more money than me. She even had the nerve to say I owed her $200, $0 in marital expenses, which was her way of trying to guilt-trip me into accepting her lies. I couldn't believe her audacity, but I knew the truth. I had all the evidence I needed. I was ready to confront her again, armed with everything. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I called her that night, and she answered with that fake, sweet voice she always used when she wanted something. I told her I knew everything, the affair, the transfers, the secret accounts. Her face went pale, but she quickly recovered, trying to deny everything. She told me I was crazy, that I was accusing her of things she didn't do, and that I was jealous of her success. That was her game, gaslighting, lying, twisting the truth. I snapped. I told her I was done playing her game. I told her I'd already spoken to my lawyer and I was preparing to take legal action. I told her she'd crossed a line and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Her response? A bitter, snide remark about how I owed her for everything she'd done, how she'd sacrificed for this marriage, how I was just a jealous, insecure idiot. That's when I realized she'd never change. She was a manipulative, selfish bitch who had no regard for me or our marriage. In that moment, I decided I was done. Done with her lies, her betrayal, her games. I knew I had to cut ties and protect what was left of my life. I was tired of feeling like a fool, tired of feeling betrayed. I was going to fight for my rights, for my property, and for my dignity. I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer first thing in the morning, and I started drafting a plan to get everything sorted: divorce, asset recovery, maybe even criminal charges if I found evidence of theft or fraud. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything I'd lost: trust, security, my marriage, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in months, I was seeing the truth clearly. Emily wasn't the woman I thought she was. She was a liar, a thief, and a cheat, and I was finally going to do something about it. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was done being a victim. I was done being the fool. Tomorrow, I was taking my life back. The next morning, I was up before sunrise, already on the phone with my lawyer, Tom. I laid out everything: her affair, the secret transfer of our house, the hidden bank accounts, the fraudulent claims of marital expenses. Tom listened carefully, asked detailed questions, and then assured me that I had a solid case. He told me to prepare all the documents I'd gathered: bank statements, transfer records, texts, everything, and to be ready for a tough fight. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Finally, I was taking control. While I waited for the legal paperwork to be drafted, I started thinking about the bigger picture. Emily had always been the bitchy type, quick to throw tantrums or dismiss my concerns. But beneath that, she was calculating, manipulative, and ruthless. I realized her entire plan was about controlling her assets and punishing me for not being the man she expected. She used her charm and her success as weapons, and I'd been too blind to see it. Now, I was determined to expose her for who she truly was. The legal process moved fast. By midday, I had a temporary restraining order in place to prevent her from selling or transferring any more assets. The court also froze her bank accounts, which she was still trying to access. I was relieved to see her face when she learned her access was cut off. She called me that afternoon, her voice dripping with fake tears, claiming she was the victim and that I was trying to destroy her. I didn't bother arguing. I just told her I had all the proof I needed and that she should prepare for a serious fight. Meanwhile, I started contacting the bank to trace the transfers she'd made to her sister Lisa. I found out that over $200, $0 had been moved into Lisa's account during the chaos of discovering her affair. I also learned that Emily had been secretly paying her sister for years, using our joint funds under the guise of family support. It was clear she'd been planning her escape long before I found out. The money transfers, the house transfer, the secret accounts, all part of her scheme to wipe her slate clean and leave me holding the bag. I confronted Emily one last time that evening. I told her I knew about everything: her affair, the transfers, her lies. Her face twisted into that familiar fake expression, but this time I saw through it. She tried to deny everything, but I laid out the evidence in front of her. Her eyes widened in panic. She told me I was crazy, that I was making things up, and that I was jealous of her success. I just shook my head. "You've been caught, Emily. It's over." I told her I was filing for divorce, that I was going to take back what she'd stolen, and that she'd never manipulate me again. She started crying, but I didn't buy it. I knew her tears were just another act. Deep down, I'd realized she'd always been this way: selfish, manipulative, willing to do whatever it took to get what she wanted. The betrayal cut deep, but I was finally seeing her for what she truly was. I felt a strange sense of clarity, like I'd been blind for too long. Now I could focus on rebuilding my life without her. Over the next few days, I worked with my lawyer to file for divorce and to recover the assets she'd stolen. I also contacted a forensic accountant to trace every dollar she'd moved. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. She lied about her expenses, claiming I owed her hundreds of thousands, but in reality, she'd been draining our account, transferring funds, and hiding assets to prepare her escape. I knew I'd have to fight hard in court, but I was ready. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. One thing that struck me during this whole process was how her manipulation had extended beyond just the affair. She'd been systematically dismantling our financial stability, turning our marriage into a game she controlled. She lied about her marital expenses, claiming I owed her $200, $0, but that was just her way of trying to guilt me into accepting her narrative. She wanted to make me feel guilty, to make me think I was the bad guy, but I saw through her now. I saw the truth behind her lies. The final blow came when I discovered she'd been secretly transferring our house, our biggest asset, into her sister Lisa's name. She claimed it was for safekeeping, but I knew better. That was her way of protecting her assets from division in the divorce. I filed a motion to undo the transfer, and the court agreed, appointing a special master to review the deed. I was determined to get our house back, or at least its value. I couldn't let her walk away with everything, especially not after everything she'd done. Emotionally, I felt drained but also strangely liberated. The weight of her lies was finally lifting. I no longer felt like I was living in a fog. I'd been betrayed in the worst way, but I was also learning how to stand up for myself. I realized I'd been too trusting, too naive. But now I was taking control. I was going to rebuild my life, even if it meant starting over from scratch. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was done being the victim. From now on, I'd be the one in charge. The court proceedings dragged on for weeks, but every day I felt a little more empowered. I had my evidence, my lawyer was sharp, and I was prepared for a fight. Emily, predictably, played her victim card at every turn, crying, claiming I was trying to ruin her, insisting that everything she'd done was justified because she was building a future for herself. She spun lies about how I was controlling, jealous, and abusive, even though I'd barely raised my voice through the entire ordeal. It was classic manipulation, and I saw right through it. One day, I got the call that everything was moving in my favor. The court had temporarily frozen her assets, including the house transfer, and was reviewing her claims of marital expenses. I finally felt like I was getting some justice. But Emily wasn't about to give up easily. She ramped up her attacks, calling me every name in the book, trying to threaten me with false accusations, and demanding I drop everything to settle out of court. She even threatened to sue me for defamation, which made me laugh. She was the one lying, not me. Meanwhile, I continued working with the forensic accountant. We traced every penny she'd secretly transferred, and I was stunned to see the extent of her financial deception. She drained at least $250, $0 from our joint account, money I thought was safely invested in our future. She also transferred the house into her sister Lisa's name, as I suspected, but the court was reviewing that as well. I felt a mix of anger and determination. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, trusting her, working so hard for us, only to find out she'd been planning her escape all along. One of the most shocking moments came when I uncovered a hidden email thread between Emily and Mark, her boss. They'd been planning her exit strategy for months. She was going to leave, claimed she was forced to sell her shares of the company and start fresh with Mark. They even discussed how she'd spin the story to make me look like the villain. That was the final nail in the coffin for me, the proof that her betrayal was premeditated, calculated, and ruthless. I was also working on a plan to get back what was mine: the house, the money, everything she'd stolen or transferred. I filed a motion to undo the house transfer, and the judge granted a temporary injunction. I knew I had a long fight ahead, but I was determined. I couldn't let her walk away with our life savings and our home without a fight. I also contacted an estate attorney to review her claims of marital expenses, because I knew she was trying to manipulate the system. Throughout all this, Emily kept up her false facade of innocence. She'd cry, scream, and try to guilt-trip me. "You're destroying our marriage," she'd say. "I only did this because I thought you didn't love me anymore." But I wasn't buying it. I knew the truth now, and I was done playing her game. I realized how much she'd lied, cheated, and stolen from me, and I was ready to expose her in court. One evening, after a particularly intense day in court, I sat alone in my apartment, exhausted but relieved. I reflected on everything I'd been through: the betrayal, the lies, the secret transfers, the manipulations. It was a nightmare, but I was finally waking up. I'd lost trust in her. Yes, but I'd gained clarity. I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd done everything she could to destroy what we had. I knew this was far from over. The court battles, the financial recovery, the emotional scars, they'd all take time. But I was resolved to fight for what was rightfully mine. I'd come too far to let her take everything without a fight. I also realized I'd learned a lot about trust, deception, and resilience. Trust is fragile. I now know that firsthand. But resilience, that's what gets you through the worst storms. As I sat there contemplating the future, I thought about how I'd rebuild my life. I'd start fresh, focus on myself, and make sure I never let someone manipulate me like this again. I'd also warn others, never ignore the signs of deception, no matter how perfect things seem on the surface. Because in the end, the truth always comes out, and those who lie and cheat will have to face the consequences. This whole experience has been a brutal lesson, but I refuse to let it define me. I've learned that sometimes, the only way to truly move forward is to fight back and take control, and that's exactly what I intend to do. The final hearing was the culmination of everything I'd been fighting for. After months of legal battles, evidence gathering, and sleepless nights, the court finally ruled in my favor. The judge ordered Emily to relinquish control of the house back to me, undo the transfer to her sister Lisa, and return the funds she'd secretly siphoned from our joint account. It was a hard-fought victory, and honestly I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. Watching her face as the judge delivered the verdict was almost satisfying. Her fake tears, her protests, it all felt hollow now. In the aftermath, I started the process of rebuilding my life. I moved out of the place we shared, found a small apartment nearby, and began to piece myself back together, emotionally, financially, mentally. It wasn't easy. The betrayal had left scars and trust was shattered. But I knew I had to focus on moving forward. I put every penny I could into therapy to heal from the emotional trauma and into rebuilding my savings. I also made sure to keep a close eye on my finances because I'd learned the hard way how dangerous it is to trust someone blindly. Emily, predictably, didn't take the defeat well. She tried to manipulate her way back into my life, sending texts, crying on the phone, even showing up unannounced at my new place. But I was done. I cut all contact. I told her through my lawyer that I wanted no further communication. She was furious, calling me every name in the book, accusing me of ruining her life, but I didn't care. She had already done that herself. All her lies, cheating, and theft had caught up with her, and she was left with nothing but her own guilt and shame. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown from this experience. I learned that trust is fragile and that you can't ignore the warning signs, no matter how much you love someone. I also learned that revenge isn't about hurting others. It's about reclaiming your life and dignity when someone else tries to take it away. I never wanted to be the guy who fought in court over money or assets, but sometimes that's the only way to get justice. Most importantly, I learned that no matter how deep the betrayal, you can come out the other side. It's about resilience, about standing up for yourself, and about not letting someone's lies define your future. I've become more cautious, more aware, but also more determined. I'm not the same man I was when I first got married. I've been broken, yes, but I've also been rebuilt, stronger, wiser, and more prepared for whatever life throws my way. So to anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, here's my advice. Trust your gut. Pay attention to the signs. Don't ignore red flags just because you want things to work. And if you find yourself betrayed, don't waste time feeling sorry for yourself. Fight back. Protect what's yours. Because at the end of the day, your life is worth fighting for, even when everything seems to be falling apart. I won't say I've moved on completely. That's a process. But I'm definitely moving forward. And I know now that I'm capable of surviving anything. No matter how bad it gets, I'll rebuild, stronger, smarter, and more aware of what real loyalty and honesty look like. That's the biggest lesson I take from all of this. Never settle for less than the truth. And never let anyone steal your peace.